Welcome to What the Heck's your source for Warhammer Underworlds and under 30 things that I would do for love, but I won't do that. I'm your co-host, Davy. And with me, I have my mindless minion who flips over feature tokens, Phil. How are you, Phil?
Arg.
For your context, we are recording on the 9th of March. We are 1 week out from when you will be hearing this. If you're listening on the day of release, this is the of the many releases. We are bringing you Zondara's Gravebreakers right out of the gate because it's the one that our crew is most excited about. And it's kicking off our week of Warhammer Underworlds. We are going to release an episode a day until we've done all 6 of these new releases. That'd be Rhyme Locked and all 4 warbands from the Mirrored City release. That is how the only way we could think to handle this without it being like next year by the time we were done covering this stuff. So.
Yeah, we may or may not have used some necromancy to get some of this stuff done, though.
Yeah, I mean, when you have helpful zombies to do some of the lifting for you, man, everything gets easier. Yep. We for the Mirrored City releases, we're going to do a live look. So that is, you'll be hearing us as we see the cards for the first time. We spent a little bit more time on Rhyme Locked and Zondara's Gravebreakers. However, for these, we're going to do some of the highlight cards like we often do, and we're going to try and finish it off with a quick deck build. And at the time of recording, Brian and I have actually already recorded Rhyme Locked, built a deck with that, with a pairing, and we're maybe going to try and ram these 2 warbands together and see what happens.
Should be interesting.
Yeah, if we get something that's worthy of a battle report, we'll do a full episode on it. Otherwise, we'll just kind of report back and give follow-up thoughts. So, yeah, we got a lot coming down the line. So,
oh man, so much.
Because of that, for this week, we are skipping our usual segments. Our community shout-outs are what the heck is going on with you, and we're jumping right in. Rest assured, there's a lot of great stuff, folks doing great things out there. And we will make sure to highlight those as we return to a more sane release paradigm here. But Phil, you ready to talk some Zondara?
Oh yeah,
all right.
Some Zani and fur, if you will.
I'm really trying to make this a thing. All right. If we give an overview of this warband, if you're going to summarize this warband for somebody who has not been paying close attention to this hype train, what would you say?
Yeah, so we have 2 cursed lovers, which are Zondara and Ferlane. They're sort of the backbone of this warband. They make up sort of the good stats, I guess you could say. Yeah. And then they have their entourage of zombie minions that Zondara has resurrected to help try and find some sort of magic that she is trying to use to break the curse on Ferlane. Ferlane is a werewolf, if you haven't seen the models, and that is because he's cursed.
Yeah.
So a very thematic warband. I don't know that we've had one quite this thematic in a while, where they have like their whole contained backstory and like it plays into how they actually function on the tabletop, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. I'm just reading what you wrote here. The zombies are there to break graves and kick ass, and they're all out of ass. That's
true, though.
That's great. Oh man. God, I think I need to like get that as a plaque to go with this warband when they're playing. That's amazing. All right. Yeah. Well, we're gonna do our usual, and I think it's pretty critical to go through certainly the top of the line fighters, and then if not like the details of the attack actions on the zombies, which are fairly tame, at least their extra abilities, which are pretty important. I think we got to start with Zondara herself.
Absolutely.
Zondara Rivenheart. What she got for the uninspired side?
Yeah, so I would say, just looking at her stats, pretty basic to maybe even slightly below average for a leader. She's a wizard. She's level 2. Mm-hmm. She's got 3 move, 1 block, 4 wounds, and she has a staff attack, reach 2, 2 fury for 2 damage. So slightly less accurate than most staff attacks on
Mm-hmm.
leaders. You'd usually expect that to be smash. But she does have a pretty cool ability called Stolen Knowledge. This is a spell reaction that she can use after this fighter's activation. And if she casts, she gets to pick one thing. She can either heal a friendly fighter within 3 hexes, so she could heal herself or another fighter in the warband, or she can deal 1 damage to an enemy fighter within 1 hex. So a decent amount of flexibility there, but to deal the ping damage, she does have to put herself in harm's way. So,
and she is a level 2, right?
Yes, so. Level 2 wizard, so fairly reliable to use this reaction. It's not always going to go off, but like 1 focus is not too bad.
Yeah. So we will have some commentary as we go with the sort of crushing weight of the releases. We didn't have as much time to really get into these as much. However, there's a little bit of practice there, and I can say between this and an upgrade that we'll see later, I had one game against Skittershank's Claw Pack, which is a really scary matchup because they are gunning for her hardcore. She healed herself 5 over the course of the game. She still died, but it was kind of incredible. Like rats just flying in, and it was this interesting pressure where it was like, oh man, I don't think the best action right now is to like swing with this wild staff, but I really need that heal 1 so that I don't just die on the next and like do it again and again and again. So so that was pretty cool. And the whole time I was like, gosh, please don't backlash.
Yeah, seriously.
I'm going to just straight kill myself by accident on one of these. So that's quite possible.
Yeah. But for folks keeping track at home, healing 5 is more than she has total wounds. So.
Yeah. We should look at her inspired side, but before we do that, how does she inspire?
Yeah, well, we actually have 2 other things we need to talk about.
That's true.
Although we could save the one for Furlane because it's actually written out on his card.
Sure.
So she inspires when a friendly Furlane has 2 or more upgrades other than illusions. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah. It's an interesting dynamic because often we talk often about how this game is sort of a snowball. Like there's a lot of incentives to sort of Voltron a fighter, like get a whole bunch of stuff. And here, if you want to get to the inspired side, you have to be putting your upgrades on somebody else.
Yeah. Personally, I think that's okay. I think Furlane is actually the one you want to Voltron, but we'll see. So that is how she inspires. It's fairly easy for anybody who has played with or against Rippas. It's like Rippa. It's like once he's got those 2 upgrades, he's inspired, which is slightly better than this, but still pretty easy. I would say most of the time by the end of round 1, they end up inspired. So. And then I'll just say she has this other ability called Tragedy. We'll talk about it when we get to Furlane.
Sure. What does she get if Furlane gets 2 upgrades?
Yeah. She gains an additional block in defense. So that is, I think, a very big deal. And then she does get 1 extra attack dice. So she goes to 3 Fury. Less of a big deal. But I think getting the 2 block feels really important.
Yeah, really important. And then even that extra dice, especially if she's attacking in the vicinity of zombies and getting supports, like it makes those activations where you're taking the activation in order to heal or do the chip damage or whatever. It makes them less like, I have to do this like not great attack first, and then I'll get to do this important thing. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, it turns her from a slightly below average leader to a slightly above average leader. So definitely solid.
Yep.
No further comments.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Furlane, and we'll, before we hit his profile, we'll mention that Tragedy because that's an ability shared between the 2. And this is, if you think of it as salvage for objectives, then you're more or less on there. So in the power step, in place of playing a power card, you can discard an objective card that names 1 or more friendly fighters that are out of action and draw an objective card. The only fighters that are named on those, spoiler alert, the zombies are not named specifically on any of the objective cards. So it's Furlane and it's Zondara, and often it's both. You broke the numbers down, right? How many times they show up on these?
Yeah. Yeah, I did. So in their objectives, they have 7 cards that require either Zondara, Verlaine, or
Mm,
both in some combination. So
yeah.
you're looking at a pretty sizable chunk, just over half of their objectives that do in fact require them. I will say this is a little tricky in that it does say specifically they must be named.
Hmm.
They do have a couple objectives that can only be scored by them, but don't actually say Verlaine or Zondara anywhere on the
Oh,
card
okay. I think
text.
I didn't.
So there are slightly fewer that can actually be cycled with tragedy, but
Okay.
it's still close to half.
Yeah. This is not, I wouldn't even call this like a silver lining. This is like a desperation thing. And even worse, if they're both dead, then you no longer have tragedy
Oh yeah.
available. And so then it was just straight brick.
Yeah.
But having to cycle through a whole bunch of objectives that I mean, you're not going to score them anyway. So it's better to look at other things. But if you have to use this ability more than a couple times, you're in trouble. So,
Yeah. I think this is really just the insurance policy
yeah.
that's like, if one of them dies, at least then your hands aren't bricked for like the rest of the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's still bad. It's not a thing you want to be doing.
Yeah.
So that's tragedy. You want to tell us a little bit about this Wolfie boy?
Yeah, sure. Speed 4, 4 wounds, and he's on 2 dodge to start, which is pretty nice. Rending Assault is range 1, 3 fury, 2 damage with Grievous 1. So he's the one guy in the warband that can spike up to 3 damage. And his Inspire is the mirror image of Zondara's, where now if Zondara has 2 upgrades, then he inspires. And what he gains is an extra point of movement, and his Grievous 1 just becomes extra damage.
Yeah.
So that flat 3 is pretty nice, and you have access to that relatively early if you can get those 2 out. But again, we were talking about you really want to get the block on Zondara, because even though you can do things like tragedy or salvage or something, you really don't want to be doing that, especially if you're including spells. Like she's got an important role. She needs to be alive for the zombies to bring themselves back, all kinds of things. So getting her to 2 block is pretty crucial. And then it's after the fact and get Verlaine a little more inspired.
Yeah. I don't think you need Verlaine inspired, but you certainly wouldn't be upset about it.
Yeah. He's already threading the 3 damage, or your opponent's probably already playing as if that's a danger when he's damaged 2 Grievous 1.
Yeah, absolutely. Important to note, he is a beast, so
that's right.
He cannot take weapon upgrades or hold objectives.
Right, which means because all 3 of your zombies are considered beasts as well, any things that need you to hold 2 are pretty hard to score, and it's not impossible. There's some ways to do it, but pretty tough.
Pretty tough. Yeah. So we are pretty much from the outset not looking at holding objectives.
Yeah. The zombies, we're going to summarize the 3 of them. They all start on move 3, 1 block, 2 health, and they all have some variation of a very bad weapon. Crack Tomb is 2 fury, 1 damage. Pick is 1 fury, 2 damage. And Toil is 2 fury, 1 damage, range 2. So there's reasons, and I guess we should have mentioned this at the top there, that we break down a little more fully everything else. Every card by card on our blog, so you can go check that out if you want. But their Inspire, they each get a point of health, actually. So 3 move is you could have ended up with 2 move zombies and you would not have been surprised. 3 move is it felt nice only because I was so worried about, in my head I kept thinking they must be 2 move, but
no, 3 move is average, so I'm not upset about it. They do inspire by getting a raise counter, so similar to some of the other undead warbands, they have to die before they can inspire, which not ideal, but it's fine. I don't know. You don't really care if these guys are inspired anyway.
Yeah, and what I do like is that they're slightly harder to farm, because once they come back with 3 health. And so finding somebody to do 2 damage to a zombie is not that big a deal. Finding someone to do 3 is a little more work.
Yeah, for sure. And I suppose if we were to say, like, if you have to care about any of these guys for making attacks, I think Toil is the one you care about because he's reach 2. None of their attacks are good though.
No, they're not. The reach 2 is helpful because things can get a little congested with the zombies, and for the Gravebreak reaction, it means if he's already where he wants to be on, for instance, on a feature token, that helps. But we should talk about Gravebreak.
Yeah, so this is a weird ability in that it's doing a thing that really no other warband does, and then it also is like they made it one big long ability. It's all part of the same reaction, but it's written across the 3 fighters cards.
Yeah,
so just bear with us here. So to start on Toil, we have the actual Gravebreak reaction, which they all have. And it says, after this fighter's activation, other than an activation that included a super action, lame, place an objective token from this fighter's hex into an adjacent hex. Then you may unearth or exhume. So when we are talking about unearth, we have to go over to pick. And it says, and then I think this is the one you're going to want to do most often. So this says, search your power deck for a Zondara's Gravebreakers upgrade. So it has to have their symbol on it. You reveal the card, add it to your hand, and then shuffle your deck.
Yeah. That's what's important to know there is, like, we've seen this sometimes, like, reveal until you find a Gravebreakers upgrade. This is like, go find the one you want.
Yeah. Pull the exact card that you care about and put it right into your hand.
Yeah.
So we don't necessarily know, because like we really only played the one game, but my thought was there's going to be like 1 or 2 upgrades that you just always want to have in your opening hand. And because of this, you can kind of just be like, okay, first activation, I'm just going to go get that upgrade.
Yeah, exactly. It can be matchup dependent. For instance, in this Skittershank Claw Pack one, I was like, okay, all these move 5 rats are trying to kill Zondara. We'll point it out when we get there, but I'm going to go immediately dig up Broken Heart, which is one that you can play out for free if Zondara or Verlaine dies. So,
oh man,
I was like,
yeah,
I have a feeling I might need this. I will put it into my hand right now. But yeah, really great. And then if nothing else, it also kind of thins the deck a little bit. So
it certainly does. Yeah. For anybody who's played like Magic or stuff like that, knowing that the next draws that you have are more likely to be the sort of gas cards that you actually need is actually a really big deal.
Yeah.
So being able to just rip upgrades out of your deck so that you know whenever you draw your next hand, you probably are drawing 3 or 4 gambits. Like that's a big deal.
Yeah. Or the downside. So like, this is a warband that loves to see a gambit heavy opening hand. Like, like that's something to maybe mulligan even more aggressively for, because you can very easily get, because often the problem with that hand is like, hey, I've got, I don't need glory to kind of fuel some good action, good stuff this round. However, I'm in a little bit of trouble because I'm going to score surges, I'm going to score end phase, and I can't spend that on anything until I draw the whole next thing. Here you're like, no, I can get some stuff to spend it on right away too. Like that felt really good.
Yeah. I think this warband, unlike any other, changes the math on your mulligans. Like you're just going to do mulligans completely differently for this warband. So pretty cool. I really like that ability. I think that it is very strong.
Yep.
But there is another part.
Yeah.
So this is exhume. This is the way that you get the zombies back. So if your leader is surviving, place up to 1 friendly minion that is out of action in another hex adjacent to this fighter, and give that fighter a raise counter.
Yeah.
So there's kind of a lot of things going on with this, similar to many of the other resurrection mechanics, where like where you can put the fighters matters. You can set up resurrections to put fighters where you want them. But I think in general, if your opponent is like, I don't know, maybe you can speak to the game that you played, but I feel like they're not going to care that much about your zombies. So I just get the feeling you won't be using this very often.
Well, yeah, yes and no. People will be tempted by the seed glory they can get by just killing these 2 wound fighters.
Fair.
So that comes into play there. The exhume in combination with Gravebreak, there's this thing where you can exhume somebody onto the token you just did Gravebreak on.
Absolutely.
Or, you can Gravebreak, because the Gravebreak doesn't have to place the token in an empty hex. So you can put it underneath somebody who's living. So I ran out of time to try doing this, but if there was a less aggressive opening from my opponent, I would have had the opportunity to basically Gravebreak and unearth multiple times, just feed it under, feed it under, feed it under, and then fill up my hand with a couple of with several upgrades. So I think some of the pairings we're looking at might care about standing on feature tokens, whether or not you're holding them, and this makes that a little more easy to pull off.
Absolutely. Yeah. Things I've thought about was like using the action to then, without having to move either Frelaine or Zondara, to like put the tokens under them. Zondara can then be holding, and then, I mean, there is a way to make Frelaine hold. I don't know if you do it, but it's at least an option. So it's like a little safer to have them under them if you need it for the end phase. So at least it lets you sort of set that up, which is kind of cool.
And that about covers it. There's like 2 quite different things going on here, and it's the whole Gravebreak thing with the zombies, and then the 2 lovers, the Frelaine and Zondara. And it feels like kind of 2 squads within your warband.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's like you're kind of setting up where you've got the 2 fighters where you're going to have them kind of do some of your brawling, and then the other 3 are just kind of there to just fuel them. And so you sort of have like, I feel like it'll make for some weird action choices though, where you're like, oh, can I afford to like take this action off to go do a Gravebreak, to go get an upgrade, and not use either Zondara or Frelaine?
Yep, totally. I think your card order, in my experience, the card order on objectives is going to be potentially very, very crucial to how your game lines up, because the zombies have the possibility of giving you a fair amount of seed glory, but you only have the room to take those activations if Zondara is not under imminent threat, or you don't have like a really important attack to try with Frelaine.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, let's talk about some of those cards, that card order.
Yeah. So I guess first I'll just sort of break down some stats quick, just as a really high overview. So like I said, there's 7 cards in the objectives that require Zondara or Frelaine to score. So that's kind of indicative of what you need to be doing. But then there are 3 objectives that specifically check placing objective tokens in some way. One of them just specifically says you placed a number of objective or a number of feature tokens. The others are specifically tied to the Gravebreak reaction itself, which can only be done with the zombies and only with objective tokens. They cannot move other types of features.
Right.
But so you are rewarded for doing that, which is nice. 3 cards for just doing Gravebreak is pretty sweet. And then you have 2 others. They're just other things. I don't know. They don't really fit the theme for any of the other stuff, in my opinion.
Fair enough.
Then for gambits, Zondara is a wizard. She has 3 gambit spells in their deck. They have a total of 4 pushes, although they are not all just like generic. A couple of them are like push Zondara and Frelaine towards each other kind of stuff, or have a fighter sort of do like a countercharge type push where you're pushing towards an enemy fighter. So not the same kind of utility you maybe would expect, but they do have some nice pushes. And overall, I would say they have a good mix of both combat trick type boosts and utility pieces for like just moving around, being in the right place for the right activations.
Yeah, that tracks.
And then their upgrades, 6 of them can only go on Zondara or Verlaine, so a big chunk. 2 are spell focused, so obviously those are part of the ones that can only go on Zondara. And then you have 8 that I sort of counted as affecting stats in some way. So just like generically, they're making the fighters better, which I think is really nice, actually.
Yeah, that's pretty solid.
So it gives us sort of a nice mix of things that we want to be doing. And I think it matches what we said before, where it's like you have the 2 fighters that want to fight, and then you've got the zombies kind of supporting.
Right.
And the whole deck kind of works around that.
Yeah. Well, let's hit it. Cruel Hope is the first one. It's a surge if Fairlane has 2 or more upgrades. So this is tragedy if you need to, but this is pretty good. And it's immediately after a power step. So it's one of those that you can kind of chain glory together.
Yep.
It's hard to get started, obviously, since you already have to have had some glory to get it out. But this is kind of what you want to be doing in general anyway. So
absolutely. I think it's a pretty decent, just like get the ball rolling, and it's right in your game plan. It's what you want to be doing anyway. So it should flow pretty nicely.
Yeah.
Next one here is Desperate Inspiration. This is a surge. Score this immediately after a friendly Zondara casts a second or subsequent spell in the same phase. So this is one of those spell ones that I mentioned. This is for 1 glory. I think there is a potential to lean into spell casting. Mm-hmm. With her reaction, there's a chance this is just going to happen. But I don't know that this really is the game plan you want most of the time. So I don't know if you take this one unless you really lean into it.
Yeah, I think the key thing is here she does not have a spell attack action on her card.
Makes it tough.
And so you have to be doing other things. Some people can get away with this because they have like a range 3 that they can keep on tossing around. In certain matchups, this is just going to like I had her behind a wall of zombies and just trying to poke at rats over the top of it and kept on triggering her heals. This would have been like inconsequential until she died, and then it would have been unscorable. So
yeah, it sort of also has that same problem as some of the old wizard warbands, where it's like you really only have the one. This one specifically, it's even if you had another one, she's the one who has to do the casting anyway. So there is that brick potential, which is a little scary.
Yep. Dreamer's Respite is the next. This is a duel. It's only for 1 asterisk, but for this there needs to be a friendly surviving Zondara and a friendly surviving Verlaine. So they both have to live. It's 1 glory unless it's the 3rd end phase, and then it's 3 glory.
Yeah.
This it feels tempting because this should be the game plan to try and keep these 2 alive. That's potentially pretty challenging to keep them both living.
Yeah. I think what you would want ideally is that you'd see this early and just get it as a nice, like, I just can kind of guarantee that in round 1, I'm probably not having them both die.
Right.
And then if you manage to make it to round 3, great. I have that extra boost of glory, but like, I don't know that you plan for this as a 3rd end phase.
Yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, if you draw it late, or if you know that you're going, like it has the potential to be scored, then you can decide like, hey, I'm going to be a little more conservative. Like I'm going to, if I can keep Verlaine alive instead of just brawling in the middle, I can pull him back, and then I've got 3 glory waiting for me just for the 2 of them being alive.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Then we get our first one that cares about Gravebreak, and this is Ever Searching. This is a surge that says score this immediately after your warband's 2nd or subsequent Gravebreak reaction in the same phase. This scores for 1. I really like this one.
Yeah.
I feel like this is about as reliable of seed glory as you could possibly get.
Yeah.
Like, how does your opponent stop this?
Yeah. Even if you're jammed up late game, it's not impossible because you can just have the 1 zombie walk onto an objective, dig it up, and then walk onto it again and dig it up.
Yeah. Yeah. Ideally, you'd maybe not have to do it with the same zombie twice, but like if you do, it's still scoreable. So
exactly.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
Yep. Great seed glory. Fates Entwined. This is just a one glory end phase. It's a hybrid. End phase, you need a friendly Zondara and a friendly Verlaine are within 2 hexes of each other, or they are both dead. Which don't do that second part.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if it's in your deck and you're like, well, they do happen to both be dead, I guess I can still score this.
Yeah.
But don't plan for that.
They have a lot of things that benefit from them. There's another surge in here that is better if they're supporting each other. And having your Verlaine close to Zondara helps you counterpunch anyone who's going in to try and kill her. Isn't great, but in a nemesis you might find something to replace it, but it's not terrible. It's fine for the rivals.
Yeah, and it is, again, it's one of those that's reliable early, gets harder as the game goes on. Mm-hmm. So if you need a mulligan for it, I think that's also acceptable.
Yep.
This next one is sort of a weird one. So this is Life and Death. This is an end phase. It scores for 2. Score this in an end phase if there are more surviving inspired friendly fighters than there are surviving inspired enemy fighters. I don't like cards like this.
Yeah.
This is very matchup dependent. Certain matchups, this will be nigh on impossible. Mm-hmm. And then in other matchups, it'll just be difficult. Because you really only have 2 inspires that are in your control, right?
That's the big part for me, is that there's some edge cases like playing against Gits, and they will get a ton of people inspired all in one fell swoop, and that's rough. But here, because you have to lose and then resurrect your zombies to really have a reasonable shot at this, that's pretty out of your control, whether or not your opponent decides to start killing them.
Yeah.
Which is too bad. For 2 glory end phase, I'm normally pretty interested.
Yeah, agreed. And it's just like, I think there's just too many matchups where this is going to be almost impossible.
Sure.
So it's unfortunate. Usually this kind of thing is something you'd like to reach for, but I'm personally off. I don't like it.
Yeah. Our next one's also zombie centric. It's also 2 glory. No stone unturned. Score this in an end phase if you placed 3 or more different feature tokens in the preceding action phase. So zombies can do this with the grave break, but they're gonna have to grave break 3 different objectives. That's a lot of activations that are just walking around or whatever. You can do this with a what we'll play in here is a plunder. Plunder will help here. Or if you're playing a particular deck, and here I guess you could do it with Fearsome Fortress with whatever the Tanglebriar.
Tanglebriar.
But more commonly, we'd see Daring Delvers doing it with they've got a couple gambits. They've got a couple upgrades. I guess Fearsome Fortress does too. Have a couple that will kind of shuffle some tokens around.
Yeah.
So
Force of Frost also can do it.
That's true. That's a good point.
You can place a few. There's a 3 block token placement cards.
Yeah, there's at least a couple gambit spells, and I think also a gambit proper. Yeah, good call.
So you got a few options.
Yeah.
I like this one. I think for two glory, I would be willing to sort of make that part of my game plan.
I think it is one that is actually not great in Rivals, not terrible in Rivals, but you have a very limited route for it. But I think this is one that, with the synergy of the right pairing, then you can do something.
Absolutely. Next, we get Reckless Effort. This is one of those ones I was talking about that is requiring Zondara or Verlaine, but doesn't actually name them. So this is a surge for 1. Or no, it's not. It's an end phase. It's end phase for 1. It says score this in an end phase if each surviving friendly fighter that is not a minion has 1 or more charge tokens, and that is Zondara and Verlaine.
Yeah.
Easy to do, but I don't know if that's your game plan.
Yeah.
Personally.
I can say in mine, I got stuck in an awful situation where Zondara had a barb token on her from what is it, Kin Whisper, that throws that out. And I was like, oh my god, I gotta
can't even move.
Decide. I was like, I guess I have to do it. I'll charge, heal myself the barb. I'd rather make more progress. But I was in a spot where I'm like, I really need any kind of glory here, and I was having the chance to score one that we'll see in a second or in a little bit here. But Yeah. It's weird because it's, this might be just a matter of like charge one fighter sometime during the round and have one glory in the end phase. But
Yeah.
so
Yeah. If one of them is dead, this becomes easier, but
yeah,
sort of a weird end phase.
yeah, yeah.
But it's not bad.
Mixed feelings on it, but
Yeah.
Soulbound Killers is a kill surge immediately after an enemy fighter is taken out of action by an attack action made by a friendly Zondara or a friendly Furlane. So specifically an attack action. This won't happen with her spell reaction. When you score this objective, gain one additional glory point if a friendly Zondara or a friendly Furlane supported that attack action. So there's a 2 glory kill surge if you can do quite a bit of setup.
Yeah.
As kill surges go, I mean, you're probably going to have to kill somebody at some point, and these are the 2 fighters that are going to do it. So not awful.
No.
And I think in Nemesis, a good chance I'll end up taking it because often in that like 5th or 6th surge, you're like, I guess I'm going to take a kill surge, and this one's totally fine for that.
Yeah. We'll get there when we get to their gambits, but they do have, like I said, they have a couple of those like counter charge type pushes that could make setting this up a bit easier.
Yep.
Then we have Strength of Despair. This is another kill surge. For one, this one scores immediately after a friendly Zondara's spell or action that takes one or more enemy fighters out of action. So she can use her reaction to score this one, but the fact that you have to do the kill with Zondara is less than ideal.
Yeah.
She does not start out as a real powerhouse.
Yeah, and you might be putting her in harm's way in a way that you might not want to for it.
Yep. Yeah, there are certain matchups where this would be nice, but I think in a lot of cases, you don't really want this to be your first option.
Yeah, I like the idea of living the dream where you like go in and, are setting up these things with her where like I'm going to poke somebody with my staff and then I'm going to use the spell gambit to kill somebody else or whatever. But yeah, those are maybe desperation plays.
Yeah.
Tireless Revenants is next. It's an end phase. Scores an end phase of each surviving friendly minion has 1 or more tokens. And this sometimes confuses people, tokens versus counters, like raise counters, wound counters, and then move tokens, guard tokens, stagger tokens, and charge tokens.
I think the way I like to think about it is that tokens are the things that clear at the end of each activation. Yeah. Counters stick around on your fighter's cards.
Does it help to think of tokens as square and counters as round?
Might also help. Yeah. Tokens are square.
This is potentially easy and maybe easier as they die. It is a little bit weird sometimes because if you bring back a zombie, they're coming back without their tokens, and you're like, man, it's a little annoying.
Yeah, it's a little awkward. Yeah. There are ways to make this work. I don't know how hard you want to lean into this though, because like I would think most of the time you're going to move 2 of them because you're probably going to want to take 2 activations with Zondara and Furlane and then 2 actions with zombies because you have 4 actions. But that leaves one of them without a token. So unless you have a way to like give them guard tokens or something, or have some way to do moves out of sequence, which I don't know why you'd want to do that with one of these guys, but let's say you did. Yeah. Like it's a way, but And so this is one of those cards I was saying, it doesn't really match either of the other things you're trying to do with the warband as well. So it's a bit odd. Not bad, but it's a bit odd.
Yeah. I think it's not quite as good as my first instinct was. Is like, sometimes I see these like, I don't have to roll any dice. I can just do it. But it's a little too much of an action tax for what it gets.
Yeah. Last one here then is Rest from the Realm.
Yeah. Look at the gains on pick. Just
yeah, I know, right? He was just like, you know what? I'm hitting the graveyard gym today, and we're just gonna lift heavy things and get swole. So this is another surge. I like this one a lot. This says score this immediately after a friendly fighter's Gravebreak reaction if that fighter is in enemy territory.
Yeah.
It's for one. So there's easy ways to set this up. I do stuff like this with Stalkers a lot, where I specifically will place one objective really close to the line. And if you're playing Fearsome Fortress, you'd probably want to be doing this anyway. And what that then gives you is like you put one zombie forward with the idea that they're going to go and grab that one and then score this.
Yeah. This is either trivial to score, like if you have the right positioning and are going first, or it can be a little bit of a pain if your enemy is specifically trying to block this, but or is blocking it because of their own game plan.
The more hold objective play that we see in the meta, the harder this would get. So like right now, I feel like it'd probably work pretty well. A lot of decks don't care a ton about objectives, other than to like counter your game plan maybe. But I think this one's doable enough that like it could make the cut in a number of Nemesis decks, I think.
Yeah.
And is probably really nice in Rivals.
Yeah.
That is all their objectives.
Right. I'm good to jump right into the gambits here if you...
Yeah, I was just going to give the count. So something I've been doing recently with Rivals decks is counting to see what their glory total is in the deck straight. So it's 14, but could flex up to 16 with the Dreamer's Respite if it's 3.
And then even 17 with that...
with this Kill Surge. Yeah, Soulbound Killers. So, you know, your floor is a little low, but your ceiling is slightly above average. So for a Rivals deck, plenty of glory.
Yeah, I'd agree. Just with a lot of it tied to a couple fighters.
Yeah, a bit of a risky game plan there.
Or, I mean, even like I said, I think even more so than the fighter cards, it's the objectives that start to make this feel like two different squads.
Yep, absolutely.
You have one squad that is working on, 5 of these objectives, and the other 2-person squad that's working on the other 7.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right. Well, the gambits, we actually start right away with a gambit spell, and one that presents a little bit of a timing question for me, but this is a gambit spell reaction. Goes on a channel, so really easy. Place after you place a feature token. If cast, give a friendly fighter an upgrade. Do not spend any glory points when you do so. This is pretty nice early, just getting you a jump start on your Inspire for Zondara or Verlaine. Mostly because if you can get, it just says, hey, if I can get 1 seed glory, then I can manage to get this. The one thing I'm not sure is at what point does this reaction come in and the whole grave break and then exhume or unearth sort of thing. So can you grave break, unearth, and then react with this? Or does this somehow jump the in between? Like as soon as you place it, do you have to react? And then you might not have the upgrade. I don't know.
Yeah. So I'm kind of 2 minds, but I will start by just saying I don't think we have any other actions quite like Grave Breaks to be able to like have a good sense of how that sequencing works. But the fact that exhume and unearth are not reactions within the reaction, they're all part of the same reaction, makes me think you have to finish the whole thing before you can say there's a window to react.
Right.
In like a charge or something, you have 2 separate things, which means there's a window in between for reactions because it's 2 separate actions. But it's Gravebreak is all one big long sequence.
Right.
So my gut is that it all has to happen before you can react, but we really don't know. I don't think we have anything else that is even remotely like that in its structure.
Yeah.
So,
So I think that rule thing aside, it's nice early. It's not really a big deal late. And if somehow the zombies are dead, then this gets a little awkward for doing. In other decks, it has some cool things where like, hey, I'm going to gambit a feature token down, and then I'm going to throw out a free upgrade. So I might end up being 11th or 12th gambit in deck building, but in Rivals, it helps you out with Desperate Inspiration and that sort of thing, the surge for scoring or casting spells.
Yeah. And if you lean into the spell casting thing, then cool, you've got another spell that doesn't require enemy fighters.
Right.
Next one we have is called Blind Devotion. This one is restricted to Zondara. This is a reaction. You play this after an enemy fighter's move action that ends within 2 hexes of a friendly Zondara. Push another friendly fighter up to 2 hexes or up to 4 hexes if that fighter is Verlaine, so that they are adjacent to that enemy fighter.
Yeah.
So this is one of those sort of countercharge type things. Ideally, you're getting to give Zondara supports when you do this. But because it happens after the move before the attack, they haven't declared who they're attacking yet. So you do have to be a little careful if Verlaine's already taken damage, you maybe don't want to just fly him in there to try and protect her, because he might just end up being the one getting shot.
Yeah, could do. It's a big push. Like 4 is a whole lot.
Yeah.
And I think this can be, for me, it was set up like, hey, I think Zondara is about to die. You are definitely going to get a revenge hit on you. Here comes Verlaine, who's going to be sitting next to you without any move or charge tokens, just going to wail on you, and then charge off to something else once you're dead.
Yeah. It's nice action economy. It's essentially a free move for Lane. So I like it.
Yeah.
And if you really need to, you can even use it to pull a zombie.
Yep.
So
next up is Bond Unbroken. Pretty great early. It is a little tough later. This is because it wants both Zondara and Verlaine to be alive. It is restricted to Verlaine. You can reroll an attack dice in Verlaine's attack rolls while there is a surviving friendly Zondara. You can reroll a defense dice in Zondara's defense rolls while there is a surviving friendly Verlaine. Persists until the end of the phase. This is an amazing one to get in your opening hand, because they are, by definition, both alive. Gives Zondara some extra survivability until you get the upgrades out on Verlaine, and Verlaine likes it for getting more likely to pop off with his Grievous.
Yeah. If this card just said they could just reroll attacks for Verlaine and reroll defense for Zondara, it might even be too strong. So very good card, but you got to really be making sure they're protected, or you just use it early enough so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We then get our first sort of oddball card here. We've got Cobbled Corpse. This is a reaction. You can play this after a friendly minion is taken out of action, and you can then place that minion within 1 hex of an objective token in your territory, then give that fighter a raise counter and either a move token or charge token. I don't know that I care like all that much, right? Like, one, to get this, you actually have to have it in hand when somebody decides to go take out a zombie, which I don't love. And then, sure, you get them back right away, but like, do you really need them back right away? It's pretty easy to get them back, right? I mean,
yeah, I kind of wonder if this is in here. This is almost like an insurance policy, like, and this is even more corner case, but if your third zombie goes down, you have no way of bringing any back.
True.
So this lets you avoid that scenario. I like that you have the option of giving a move or a charge token, so you can potentially set yourself up if you're in a charged out situation or something like that. Like, you can't jam yourself up. And then that positioning is actually very flexible. Like, if you even if you only have 2 feature tokens in your territory, if you count the feature token, or I guess objective token is what it says, but the objective token and the 6 around it, that's an option of like 14 spots in your territory that this guy can go in. So that's pretty widespread.
It's pretty nice. Yeah. Not much else to say about that.
Yeah. Curious Remnants. This is pretty solid. Choose a friendly fighter within 1 hex of 1 or more feature tokens and pick one. Heal 1 that fighter or push that fighter 1 hex. I think what I've found with some of the Force of Frost Gambit spells is that within 1 of a feature token, it really opens up, like we were just talking about, a lot of the board. And the option of heal 1 or pushing 1 that's 2 really great options. Sometimes that heal 1 is really important. Sometimes it's not, because either you're not wounded or all the damage out there is enough to kill you anyway, in which case pushing 1 is great too.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of flexibility with this card.
Yep.
It's just really good.
Yep.
Next we have Devoted Strike. This is one of these combat ones. It says +1 dice to the first attack action made by a friendly fighter other than Zondara in the next activation. So pretty nice. And then if a friendly Zondara is within 2 hexes of the target of that attack action has cleave until it has been resolved.
Yeah.
Yeah, +1 dice and cleave is no joke.
Yep. It's totally fine. And it can be used on Verlaine to really either push the Grievous uninspired or make sure you land that big 3 damage attack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I guess in a pinch, you can make a zombie serviceable with this.
Yeah. Hopefully an inspired zombie.
Yeah.
If you're using this on the uninspired attacks, you're really praying.
Yep.
But I mean, even if it's just a thing like, hey, I've got Toil, he's going to take a range 2 shovel swing. Let's see if we can just make it a little bit more useful.
Yep.
Driven Lurch, push each friendly minion up to 1 hex. That's a 3 fighter push if they're all alive. That's pretty great.
Yeah.
You can do some good stuff for setting up supports or getting onto features. I think if you're running like Fearsome Fortress, you really like this. It can set you up to do some of your grave breaks with an attack instead of a move. So that's kind of nice. Or even just a guard if you, I don't know, whatever. There are options galore. So
I love that it is push and it does not say towards feature token, towards enemy fighter, no restrictions, just wherever you need them to be, they push them.
Yeah. You know what I need to remember is that these zombies, if instead of making like a 2 fury, 1 damage attack, you might just be better off doing a stun with them. If you get them into position, stun somebody so that you can come
up. That is probably a good point.
Yeah.
Just raise Verlaine's accuracy or Zondara later.
Yeah. Next one, Phil, this is one of the weirder gambits I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's very strange. This is called Maniac Pursuit, which is a weird name. This is a reaction that says, after an enemy fighter makes a move action or is taken out of action, choose a friendly fighter. The chosen fighter makes a move action that must end adjacent to that enemy fighter or in the hex the enemy fighter was in when they were taken out of action.
Yeah.
So I think the idea with this is that if somebody's camping out on the objectives that you want to grave break, you could use this to then set up a future grave break.
Yeah, I guess so.
Or you could use this just as like a counter charge, which I think is actually pretty solid.
Yeah.
I think that's where I would use this most of the time. I have a hard time imagining why I would want to do the move right after my attack that took an enemy fighter out of action on an objective.
Yeah.
Or feature token. Does it?
A feature. So I can see this specifically if you are chasing some of the specific unearthed things, like maybe the one in enemy territory has been covered up for a while and you're running out of actions to get there or something like that. But even then you could just move. So I don't know. It's
very strange.
I've seen it to like help boost a zombie is ended up how I using it. I had one that was like kind of off somewhere else, and then somebody came in towards the middle of the board. I'm like, I'm just going to walk over to you. I'll give a support, which might not matter that much, but then it actually puts a feature token that I want to get to in range. So
yeah. I think it's a flexible card, but it is not one with a clear defined use case right out of the gate.
Yeah, specifically because the two options are quite different from each other.
Very.
That gives us Right of the Unbound, which might be the reward for some of the coolest art in here. But this is a gambit spell on a focus. If cast, choose a friendly fighter within 3 hexes of the caster in the next activation for each success, including critical successes. In the casting roll, that fighter has +1 move, and their attack actions have Grievous 1. I think you're probably only counting on this giving you 1 success. When you're casting it, if you're hoping for more, you're in danger. But a quarter of the time, you'll have more. This can, I guess, the biggest thing here is that it can bump your boy Verlaine up to some pretty impressive move, 5 or 6 or even 7, depending on how many. If he's inspired and how many successes you get, and then the Grievous, you can really spike some pretty high damage with it.
Yeah, I mean, just being 3 Fury Grievous 2 is already really scary.
Yeah.
There's a weird combo you can do with this. She has an upgrade that can give her +1 wizard level, but I don't think you want to do that. Like, that would be the just like craziest play ever.
Yeah.
But say you did, and you got +3 move
Yeah.
and Grievous 3. It'd be pretty nice, but
Yeah.
no thanks. But yeah, another spell where you don't need enemy fighters, which I think if you're gonna do spell stuff is something to keep in mind.
Sure, it's a good call.
Next we have Wild Incantation. This is the last of their Gambit spells. This one is, it's interesting that they say they're restricted to Zondara. They didn't need to, but they did.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're just saying that if somehow you
made someone else a wizard.
Yeah, like it would have to be Furlane would have to become not a beast and then get the Everwinter Staff and then would be able to cast this. So.
Or you have the Armor of Ice and you get them an ice counter. I just don't. Anyway, this is a Gambit spell. It casts on one channel, so very reliable. If it's cast, consider rolls of double support as successes in attack actions made by friendly fighters. This effect persists until the end of the phase. That's a decent boost to accuracy.
Modest. If it didn't last for the entire phase, then it'd be like, but since it's the whole phase, that's actually pretty great. It's the entire warband for the whole phase.
Yeah. But I think it's worth pointing out again, you don't have that many good attackers.
Right.
So ideally you could maybe get this with both Zondara and Furlane. And then I don't think you even bother with zombie attacks, even if they are double supported.
Yeah. You might need to,
you might have to, but yeah.
And there's one attack later that you wouldn't.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. There's an upgrade. Speaking of upgrades.
Yeah. And actually, the other thing to keep in mind as you're looking at these yourselves, or listening to us talk about them, is any one of these is grabbable on demand with the Unearth ability. And so anything that you salt in that's not this, that's not upgrades from this deck, won't gain that. But any one of these are have a little bit extra value because you can get them right when you want them.
Absolutely.
Right off the gate, we have a pretty decent one. Amberbone Infusion. This fighter's defense characteristic is 2. The most obvious place for this is the uninspired Zondara. If you decide that your other route, this is an outlet to say like, okay, actually, I'm all right with putting 2 upgrades on Zondara to inspire Furlane, because the biggest thing I want out of that inspire for her is the 2 block that she goes to. This says she's going to it now. But it can also get one of your zombies a little tougher. Yeah.
Having the zombie go up to 2 defense and then be resurrectable is interesting. I don't know how likely it is to come up.
Yeah. Good deal.
But a solid upgrade. Yeah. Plus defense is never bad. The next one we have is restricted to Zondara. It is called Borrowed Power. It says this fighter's attack actions have Cleave and Grievous 1.
As an aside, another amazing art card.
It is. Which, an aside to the aside, what in the world is that thing in the background of that art?
The origin of the tome clutched in Zondara's hands is a mystery. So
yeah, right.
That's part of the mystery.
This isn't bad. But it is sort of a weird upgrade to take because she doesn't really have a good attack to start with.
Yeah.
So what are you giving Cleave and Grievous to?
Yeah. Once she's inspired, if she's 3 Fury, damage 2, Grievous 1, Cleave, that starts to get to be a pretty respectable attack line.
It does. Yeah. And if you wanted to give her a ranged attack, I would love to have a ranged attack with Cleave and Grievous 1.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh yeah. Right. Exactly. Non-rage restricted. That's pretty cool. I mean, I think it's just, it makes her really scary to fighters that are on 3 wounds, because she has 2 routes to get that last point of damage. She can either do it with her Grievous 1, or she can do it with her spell reaction if she wants to get next to you.
Absolutely.
And even in a pinch can maybe take down somebody with 4. Here, Broken Heart. This is a really... I think it's pretty important. While a friendly Zondara or a friendly Furlane is out of action, +1 dice says fighter's attack actions, and this fighter is inspired. This gives you a way to inspire one of them if one of the others dies before the upgrades get out. And then as a reaction, when a friendly Zondara or a friendly Furlane is taken out of action, give this to a friendly fighter. Do not spend any glory points when you do so. I'll give you one hint what the first upgrade I unearthed for when I realized I was facing assassin rats.
Probably this one.
Yeah.
Broken Heart.
Yeah, I was like, there's a really good chance that I am going to lose Zondara, so I might as well have this in hand so that I can get Verlaine hitting harder and get him inspired.
Yeah, 4 Fury, 3 damage.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's scary.
Yeah, and actually I was playing it wrong. I was playing it as a reroll, not as a +1 dice. Whoops.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, +1 dice is better, so.
Sure is.
The next one is Cursed Flesh. This is +1 wounds. After this fighter is taken out of action, break this card. So some intentional thought process to say we do not want zombies with lots of wounds.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do give this to a zombie, it is a 1 and done, which I think means you probably don't put it on a zombie very often.
Yeah, I think the most common is you're putting it on because you're worried about a particular kill surge if you know what you're counterplaying against, or it's the end of the game and you're like, hey, the easiest way this other player is going to pick up glory is by knocking out one of my zombies. I'm just going to push him out of kill range with this.
Yep.
But otherwise, you're making your main fighters large, but Zondara being large with access to healing is pretty nice.
Doesn't come up very often.
Nope.
So yeah, it's nice and flexible, and +1 wounds in a rivals deck doesn't come up that much anymore.
Yeah. Next up is Cursed Power. I'm really mixed on this one. So +1 wizard level, which is great.
I'm not even mixed on this one.
Fighter suffers backlash if there are 1 or more crits resulting in their casting roll. Like, I was like, ooh, man, you are going to take a lot of damage from backlash.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, and so maybe it's just straight up bad. But and then I'm like, oh well, then you can just heal yourself after you take an action. And like,
and
hurt
yourself on
the
reaction.
heal. Yeah, it makes all your gambit spells really scary to cast. So, yeah, I think for sanity, I probably don't put this in most of the time unless they print some sort of backlash prevention, and then you're like, yeah, let's make it happen.
Yeah, if they can do that, which in champs you could do, but on the whole, I don't like this one.
Right.
I think you skip it unless you're doing something crazy with just spell casting.
Sure.
So then next up, we have Cursed Strength. So this one is +1 damage to range 1 and 2 attack actions on this fighter's fighter card specifically.
And then that. Yeah.
After this fighter's range 1 or 2 attack action, deal 1 damage to this fighter. So it's nice. +1 damage is good. Mm-hmm. Being able to potentially be spiking to 4 or just being flat 4 with Verlaine is really scary.
Yeah.
Dealing a damage to yourself though is
rough.
a really big cost.
Yeah.
And then the fact that like you can't even set up with weapon upgrades to take advantage of this is kind of a weird restriction. I'm not entirely sure why. Like when it already has such a huge downside and that you have to hurt yourself to use it.
Yeah, I think it's got to be they're just scared of, well, zombies can't even, there's only one weapon upgrade they can take. So that's,
I know, right?
All right.
I don't get it. But anyway, it's still a great strength.
Yeah.
Like
it shows how deeply we are in the Nemesis format these days, because back in the championship days, we would have looked at this and we were like, well, this is much worse great strength. Get out of here. But given how hard damage is defined in Nemesis, as we keep saying, this makes it more interesting than, I was about to
think about it for sure.
Yep. I was about to throw this on to Inspired Verlaine to try and go one-shot Skittershank, and right before that happened, he took a 3 damage hit from Pad Paw. And I was like, no, it's just mutual death. So I guess put it away again.
Yeah. And I mean, considering that this happens no matter what, whether you hit or miss with the attack. Yeah, that's pretty risky.
Yeah. Next one's restricted to a minion. It is an attack action upgrade. How is that possible? Well, the very first line is you can give this to a beast. It's range 1, 2 fury, 3 damage. Hello. That makes the attacks from the minions potentially worthwhile. So this is saying here you get to be Gristlewell for until you're not.
Gristlewell for a day.
Yeah.
past the femur.
Yeah. He's even swinging a bone, which is great.
Yeah.
With some of the accuracy upgrades, like double supports count, with some of the crowds you might be fighting in, this is not as inaccurate as it looks in a 3 damage. Moving one of these guys to a 3 damage attack is not something to be sneezed at.
Yeah, this one card for me opens up the possibility of playing a more aggro build with these guys.
Interesting. Sure.
Because you can first activation, make sure you have it in your hand, then make a point of getting it out onto one of your zombies, and now you've got 2 scary fighters. But you have to really build around it a lot, so I think it's still probably not good, but it's interesting.
But maybe.
Maybe.
All right.
Yeah, we then have reshaped darts, which the darts are reshaped because they're pieces of bone.
Yeah.
This is a spell attack action. So this is restricted to a wizard. They, for whatever reason, didn't say Zondara on this one. So if you want to go crazy and make somebody else a wizard, they can take this. And then this is a range 4 channels. Doesn't have the characteristic because it's based on their wizard level for 1 damage. So pretty accurate. And that range 4 is no joke.
Yeah.
I feel like the prevalence of range 4 weapon upgrades has become pretty common.
It's surprising. It was extraordinarily rare in the early days and not as much anymore.
So then the question is this worth taking? Do you want to take up an upgrade slot to give Zondara a ranged attack?
So I think if you decided that you're pairing with something that leans a little harder into the spell casting, then yes, because this is easy spells to cast. There's almost 2 spells because you get to throw this dart and then heal, or you use her reaction. Borrowed power or whatever it is. And that makes that more interesting. It lets her do some things without getting stolen knowledge is the ability. It lets her do some things with without putting herself in harm's way nearly as much. And I think it can potentially play pretty nicely with the next card up. Important to know that spell attack actions cannot be supported. I know they don't have supports on the dice, but by definition, they never count as supported either. So this soulbound killers can't get extra help from this if you were to get a kill with this. So I don't know. I think it all often get cut, but it's not bad.
No, it's a tough choice because it's got utility, but it's not really in the game plan.
Yeah, combine it with the actual borrowed power, and then this has got Grievous 1 and Cleave, which
suddenly is pretty scary.
Yeah. Well, Salvage Intelligence is the next one. This fighter is not and cannot be a beast. Reaction after a friendly Zondara's activation. If that fighter did not make a charge super action, this fighter makes an action other than a super action. It needs a little setup, but this is often a way you can end up. I had multiple times where if I'd had this out, I could have made an attack with both of them, which is pretty great.
I think there's enough push tech in this deck and other decks that you can make this pretty reliably. Like extra attacks out of sequence. And it's just flexible, right? Like you could even take a guard action, right? So
or if you really want to knock somebody down, Zondara could barge somebody. And that, I don't know. There's some weird possibilities, and you just have to keep your eye out for them.
Now I'm imagining these two as wrestlers and they just tag teamed into the ropes. Okay. Anyway, that is a whole nother headcanon. But I really like this card. I think this is a really good one. I'd be hard pressed to cut this, and it does technically open up the opportunity for holding objectives.
Right.
And then the last one, Undying Love. This is actually a bit of a weird card. It's restricted to Frelaine. It says when you give this upgrade to a fighter, I don't know why it says a fighter. There's only one fighter you can give it to. And at the start of each round, if there is a surviving friendly Zondara and a surviving friendly Frelaine, heal 1 each of those fighters. Then you can push one of those fighters up to 3 hexes towards the other.
Pretty great. Heal 1 each. So with each, for that to be valid, you only need 1 damage on one of them.
Yeah, but you do have to have one of them wounded.
Yeah, so I think even to play it out in the first place and then to do this thing, one of them needs to be wounded.
Yeah.
But this is a rare case of healing somebody in the end phase, because I made it out of the first round with only 1 glory, laid this on Verlaine, healed Zondara 1. She had 3 damage on her, healed her 1, and then the round started and she healed another 1. So this is like a heal 2 if applied in the end phase, which is
that's
cool.
pretty nice.
Yeah.
The push 3 is...
Yeah, unfortunately, I couldn't do that because I'd been I'd had the misplaced confidence, where the Skitter Shank makes your leader walk two spaces in a random direction, not random, where exactly where they want you, and I'd walked right into a long line of zombies. So I had a push that could get me closer, but I think the definition of a push up to 3 hexes towards the other. I think each push in that chain has to be closer, and the first push would not have taken me closer. So I think I was just stuck on the end.
Unfortunate.
Yeah. But heal 2 is totally worth it. So
yeah. Yep. So a bit of an odd card to play around, but it is a good one.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Lots utility.
Yeah. I think if you are committing, and it's hard not to, committing to the Verlaine and Zondara are doing things plan, then this is a pretty good one.
Yeah.
And it says you can push one of those fighters up to 3. So if you really like where they're already at, you're not required to do it.
Yeah, the push is not a requirement.
Yeah.
But the heal is.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. So if you want to be able to push, you'll have to be able to heal at least one of them. But if you want to be able to heal, you don't have to be able to push.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Healing is very muddy in this game.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, my thoughts on that warband overall is I continue to really like how much they tell a story, or like lean into themes with some of these warbands, like really interesting, what they're doing with them, like pretty fun.
Yeah. Super thematic.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be interesting to see if the opponent has the ability to assassinate Zondara or Verlaine to a lesser extent early. You can really get a lot of the legs cut out from under you on this. But potential.
Yeah, plenty of potential. Speaking of potential,
yeah, go for it.
Should we try and build a deck with these guys?
Yeah,
see what they could do.
What pairing sprung to mind for you here?
So there's a number of different things, but the first thing that I sort of did, I looked at all the available rivals decks, and I just started like, okay, what are the ones that are basically impossible? We'll just never use them. There's really only one that is completely impossible, and that's Paths of Prophecy. It's all about holding objectives, and you just can't. You do not have enough fighters to do it, so that one was out completely. And then after that, it was sort of trying to understand more of the game plan that they like. So I personally don't think that they're really built for being super aggressive. So I didn't think Breakneck Slaughter or Tooth and Claw made any sense. Or I guess Deadly Deaths technically is also kind of aggressive.
Yeah.
So I cut all those as options.
At an outside, I can almost see Tooth and Claw just with Verlaine. Yeah, but it's not. Yeah, probably not.
It's tough, right? Because like only 2 of your zombies are range 1.
Yeah.
And everything in that deck cares about range 1.
You're right.
It's tough.
Yeah.
I looked through all the cards. So I was like, well, maybe. And then I was like, no. And so then it's like, well, the rest of them technically work. It's just how well do they work? And I think at this point, I wouldn't necessarily know which ones are best. I think Masks is possible, but hard because they also care about holding. Yeah. So you would need to then be doing the hold parts with Verlaine and Zondara.
Yeah.
And I think that's just a little too restrictive.
Verlaine only once you've got the upgrade.
Only once you have that other upgrade. So you'd be forced to get that one in your opening hand, basically. So it's a lot. And then you have to bring enough masks. So like, I don't love it. So that sort of leaves you with a handful of other things. Seismic Shock actually has a lot of hold.
Yeah, that's true.
That's another one that I cut that I just wasn't thinking about. So So that sort of leaves you with a handful of options. I think personally, I like sort of the other decks from Gnarlwood as the best options. So you've got you have Daring Delvers,
Mm-hmm.
you have Fearsome Fortress, or you can do the Beast thing and do Beastbound Assault.
Mm-hmm.
I do think they can play with Force of Frost, but I think it's a much different build, and I think it's a lot harder.
Right.
Yeah, you really kind of need Zondara.
Yeah, do you really get forced into a Zondara, like everything rides on Zondara sort of situation?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, those are the ones I was thinking about. Anything that really jumped out at you?
I mean, I think those are solid. I remain like a little vague on Beastbound Assault most of the time. I think a lot of those, like, you do have a lot of beasts, which is cool. You start with 4 of them. I know the upgrades aren't amazing in that, but it didn't feel like there was a ton of I hate these upgrades in this, so that's not terrible. So I've thought the least about that. I'd want to take another look at that. Skylar had me fairly sold on Fearsome Fortress.
Yeah.
The specifically that has like stuff that says hold but don't really hold. It's like just be standing on feature tokens, and a lot that really care like, hey, can you sneak feature tokens closer and closer to each other? If so, then you can really pull off some cool tricks, and these guys can do that almost casually.
Yeah. The only thing that gives me any amount of pause with running Fearsome Fortress is that it does mean all the zombies need to be right in that middle line.
Yeah.
It's a little risky, but not impossible. And it does mean that you could be doing more of the exhume stuff if your opponents decided they're going to kill your zombies.
Yeah. Interesting.
So lots of good options between those two. I personally have thought more about Daring Delvers just because I like the access of this warband where, like, what can they do that no one else can do? And they have specific mechanics that care about placing and scoring from placing feature tokens.
Mm-hmm.
So Exploration also cares about placing feature tokens.
Mm-hmm.
So that was where I went.
Yeah.
So I think we could do either one.
I'm down to give Daring Delvers. I don't think Skylar has anything going on, and we'll make him build a Fearsome Fortress build.
I bet he's already done it.
I joke. Skylar's doing a ton of stuff for us for the podcast. But yes, I bet he's already done it. So, and we'll see if we can cook something like that up and maybe include it in the show notes on the release or for shortly after.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
as with any good deck, I think we should start with some objectives.
Can't go wrong with that. Let's also maybe start with surges and circle back around if we think, or are you?
Yeah, that's usually how I like to operate, because I think the surges give you sort of it's what's going to set you up. So it's what you kind of want to do. So I personally think it's probably better to start with their faction cards. And then fill in the gaps from there.
Sure.
So I think the first one for me in their surges is Ever Searching. And I think it's pretty much an auto include if you're going to play Daring Delvers.
Ever Searching is Gravebreak twice.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think it's just an easy first choice. And then I think the choice becomes either Rest from the Realm if we want to have one zombie that goes into enemy territory.
Yeah. I think you put that as just like it could happen. And even if one ends up in like no man's land, you can grave break that into enemy territory, then go after it. Like, I think there's a lot of good choices there.
Yeah. I think it's good. I think, for folks who don't know, Daring Delvers actually cares a lot about being in enemy territory anyway. So you're going to have to sort of work around that to, like, just no matter what. So I think it makes sense. And then, I don't know, Soulbound Killers feels like one you probably start with in and then only cut once you feel like you don't have room for.
I think that makes sense.
Are there any other in-faction surges that you think really should be in here?
Nothing's screaming at me that we should go for it.
Like Cruel Hope is maybe reliable.
Yeah, no, just Cruel Hope for sure. Let's do that.
Okay. So we'll put it in.
Yeah.
It's nice and passive too,
Yep.
right? So I
Oh,
kind of like
yeah,
that.
we already said it's passive and it's leaning on what your game plan ought to be anyway.
Yeah.
So
So that's a nice start. We got 4. I think it's pretty easy to cut the other ones.
yeah,
So then we're into Daring Delvers. So the one that I always reach to first for Daring Delvers, which is not always, I think, clear when people first read the deck, is Pathfinders.
yeah,
So this one is a surge that you score immediately after a power step, which is important. It's after a power step. If your exploration count is twice the round number,
yeah,
or your exploration count is equal and you have an explorer.
yeah. I think we'll probably end up including at least a handful of explorer upgrades, but this warband more than hardly any other has the ability to kind of get some easy exploration up pretty early. So I think that's
Yeah.
a good call, particularly for this one.
Yeah. I think the ideal situation is round 1. You have this in hand. You do Gravebreak twice to get the in-faction upgrades you want, and then you score this.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I agree.
it's pretty nice. That then leaves us with a couple choices, but I don't know which ones are the best choices. So I think there's some discussion to be had.
Yeah, I think I generally like Stealthy Advance pretty well. It's just a little awkward with this warband because they're going to Gravebreak a token away,
Yep.
and then they're not standing it on anymore. But you are maybe hopefully following up with, because you like to be standing on features outside of your territory to push your exploration count up in the end phase as well.
Yeah.
So I think including it puts in your game plan. I think there's the Gravebreak, and then if you don't really need another Gravebreak, then Verlaine or somebody else comes charging onto that one that you just moved, or you're forcing the enemy to do that, and maybe that's suboptimal for them.
Yeah. There's also other things where, like, you could place a feature that you could then charge onto later using a power card, or if your opponent was trying to be cagey and they're like, oh, I'm going to keep these objectives away from you. And it's like, cool, now I have this landing spot for a charge and can do that. The other one that I think is pretty reliable, but maybe not for this warband, is Brave the Root Maze. This is beyond 3 feature token. Well, beyond either 3 feature tokens, a cover hex, or a lethal hex. So you can even use your board to set this up. The problem is your zombies, after their activations, usually won't be on feature tokens anymore.
Yeah, they're going to be doing some anti-synergy with this.
Yeah.
I would keep an eye on like how this deck plays out, and if it turns out that like, hey, this is actually popping up more often than I thought, maybe it slots back in.
Yeah. There's ways you could set it up with power cards as well. So like maybe, but I think for right now we can probably say Stealthy Advance. I do want to mention the one other surge, just because I don't think you could ever run it with anyone else. And it's Uncovered Secrets.
Yeah. I would not start with it in, but
nope.
I wouldn't either. Yeah, if you realize after a few plays, like, I'm actually getting up in the range of this.
Like if I really wanted to, I could have hit this.
Yeah.
Then I think you start to look at putting it in, because a 3 glory surge for doing passive stuff is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
The closest I've ever gotten is Exploration 8.
Ooh, it's pretty good.
Which is good, but like that was like everything's going perfectly.
Yeah.
So, but then again, this warband could be looking at 2 exploration per round just from Gravebreaks. So like it's something I'm thinking about. So I agree. I think we take Stealthy Advance and we keep the other options in mind.
Yeah, we didn't mention Sudden Demise, which is always tempting, but without any in-faction ping, I don't think you can do it.
Yeah, and it has to specifically be a Gambit ping, so her reaction doesn't count.
Right. And you can't count on the presence of lethals to do it for you.
Yeah. So. No, I don't think this warband can do it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want it. I guess since we've mentioned all but one, we might as well say there's another surge, Terra Incognita. If it didn't require a persistent domain, I would say it's probably likely that we would want it in here just for having an explorer outside of our territory, but it is not that good.
Yeah.
You need to have a domain gambit and some upgrade to make your fighters explorers, or put Zondara in enemy territory, which you do not want to do.
If we shock ourselves and take a whole bunch of domains, then we go back to it. But no.
Yeah, it seems unlikely.
All right, end phases.
Yeah, so I think again we'll start with the in faction ones. I think No Stone Unturned is a must include for this deck, right?
Yeah, it's clear. This is the 3 different features have been placed.
Yeah. I think it's pretty reliable and for 2 glory, so I like it.
I might go Dreamer's Respite. This is both of them alive. That feels pretty steady.
Yeah, and I think the nice thing with it in this deck is that your game plan is going to be way less aggressive. And so you can probably afford to deploy them further back.
Yeah.
And hope to just kind of hang out, because if your opponent doesn't come to you and they're just like, nope, I'm not going to engage, it's like, okay, I'm just going to grave break.
Right.
Over and over and over, and then be like, oh, look at that. Round 1's over and I have 4 exploration.
Yeah.
So I think it sort of forces a bad situation for your opponent. So I like having that.
Yep. Let's see. In faction, there's not a lot else leaping at me. We already talked about a tireless revenants. I may come back to that if we're jammed up, because we are going to be.
That's the other one I was looking at.
Yeah. Let's put it in to start, and we'll pull it back out if we see enough that we like in the.
Yeah, I think Fate Entwined and Life and Death are both pretty rough, and then
the reckless effort is: did you charge with everyone who's not a minion?
Yeah, which isn't really what we want to be doing. Yeah. So I agree.
So how many end phases have we got right now?
Technically 3.
Okay, 3 with one we're not too super excited about.
Yeah, one we're not super excited about, which, to be honest, isn't that crazy for Nemesis. So then we get into Daring Delvers. Okay. Their end phases are interesting. So I think the big questions become, how much do we want to be putting Zondara in any sort of harm's way?
Initially, unless we have to, not at all.
Probably 0, right? So we can't take a Bold Venturer.
Yeah.
Because the leader has to be in enemy territory.
I think Fearless Explorer is an easy pickup. That is something about domains being a discard pile, whatever.
But, and then we just ignore that and say exploration count is 5.
Yeah.
I think that will happen at some point throughout the game.
Yeah.
And you can just kind of say, yep, I've got this one coming to me at some point.
I think Claim Guardians is a little harder. No, I'm looking at the wrong thing.
Well, it is harder, but you're probably thinking about Cautious Venture.
I am thinking of Cautious Venture. Yeah.
Yeah. I think Cautious Venture we could probably look at including. So this exploration count is 3, and 2 or more surviving friendly fighters are in enemy territory.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can do that. I think the zombies push the exploration count up. And then if they've killed 1 or more of them, I mean, for one, you're bringing them back and they're harder and harder to kill. And then if you need to, you can bomb for lane in or something like that.
Yeah, I think basically this reads, if it's in hand, your last activation is going to be moving for lane in enemy territory, and hopefully you have another fighter already in. And with some of those power cards that let you move, like as a reaction, I think you can kind of set this up without as much action economy downside as you might think.
Sure. And I think that just leaves, so Claim Guardians, no thanks. It needs us to hold 2. There's too much of a pipe dream. Bold Venture, we already said about that. That leaves Survivalist, which is a 1 glory if everyone's in cover on a feature or has an upgrade. That is a little tough to do in this 5-fighter warband.
It is.
And so if it's tough to do, I would rather reach for Sleepless Sentries, I think.
I think if you're going to have to stretch, or like if you have to choose between stretch options, you're looking at either Sleepless Sentries or Claim Guardians. I think Sleepless Sentries is probably better because it's just positioning, whereas Claim Guardians, you need positioning and an upgrade from your deck and have both Zondara and Frelaine alive on objectives.
Yeah. What's interesting, because at first I was like, well, you need one specific upgrade. I'm like, well, you can get it really easy.
You'll always have it.
Yeah. But they would both have to be alive and they would both have to be on objectives.
Have to hold.
Yeah.
It's tough. I think it's one that we could also be like thinking about and be like, if I were playing this deck, could I have just done this? Like, how passive can I be?
Sure.
Because like you'll have 2 objectives in your territory, pretty much guaranteed.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a way. I wouldn't want to just bank on it, but I think it's something to think about because I think hitting 5 exploration isn't crazy.
Sure. I think we got our 12.
Nice.
So we've got Sleepless Sentries, Cautious Venture,
Yep.
Fearless Explorer.
Yep.
And then from Infaction.
So we had No Stone Unturned,
Yeah.
Dreamer's Respite, and Tireless Revenants.
And then our surges are
Cruel Hope, Ever Searching, Soulbound Killers,
yeah.
Rest from the Realm.
Yeah.
And then for the non-infaction, we had Pathfinders and Stealthy Advance.
Okay, let's go. Let's do Gambits, I think. Yeah.
For sure.
Okay. I think maybe start in fact. Well, what are the ones we absolutely know we're taking? There's
stuff we pretty much have to have for this strategy to work. So I think we can just put those in right away.
Yep, lay them on me.
They are, so there's Significant Find, which is one that lets you place an available feature token in an empty hex, 2 or more hexes from each fighter.
Yep.
Or you can just increase your exploration by 1 if you have a friendly explorer.
Okay.
Not in your territory. So anyway, you want that to place more tokens. And then the other one that places tokens is called Temporary Haven.
Yeah.
You can place an available feature token in a hex occupied by a friendly fighter not in your territory, or increase exploration count by 1 if 1 or more friendly fighters are each on a feature not in your territory.
Okay. Easy enough. Are there any other gambits in Delvers that we have to take this? I know there's some good ones that we will probably take, but
there are definitely some good ones. I don't know what else is like a must include, but I certainly would feel silly not taking Quick Roots. But
yeah, well, let's write Quick Roots. Obviously,
we're not crazy here. Yeah, I mean, that is probably the best ping that they ever made. It's guaranteed to happen. But beyond that, I don't think there's any that you have to have. And so it becomes a question of like, how many slots do we have? What else do we want to do?
Sure. Okay. Well, let's see what we have in faction that we're almost certainly going to take.
So probably Curious Remnants.
Yeah, I like that. That's the pusher heal.
And then Driven Lurch to push all the minions. I would guess we also want that.
Yep, I like that.
I like pushes. I am thinking about either Blind Devotion or Maniac Pursuit. I'm not sure if I want both.
In that case, probably, well, just because I'm so weirded out by Maniac Pursuit. I mean, I guess it gets you onto a feature token, which gets you at the end, or can if you're having trouble with it. I kind of like the push on Blind Devotion.
Yeah, it's a little more flexible.
Yeah.
It doesn't give you a move token.
Yeah.
We might even still include them both. We'll see what we come to in totals when we get down to the end.
I like Bond Unbroken.
Yep. I think that works.
There's that free upgrade, Atavistic Creativity.
It'll be easy to trigger.
Yeah, I kind of want it because it helps us get some explorers, which I guess we don't care a huge amount about, but we don't.
Do feel like our surges are pretty reliable though. Yeah. So it is a question of like, does it end up taking up a slot that could be something more useful?
Sure.
I don't know.
Well, let's see. Without it, right now we're on 7. We got Significant Find, Temporary Haven, Quick Roots, Curious Remnants, Driven Lurch, Blind Devotion, Bond Unbroken. There's a couple accuracy things in here. Let's take another look back at Daring Delvers and see.
Yeah. So Flame Wisps is an option. Because we do have a wizard.
Yeah.
So that's another pretty reliable ping, although it is still dice, so not always going to happen. But I mean, I feel like when you do the 3 rolls, it's almost guaranteed.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's probably a good call. A little extra help.
And then after that, in Daring Delvers, I do like Zone of Control, but I don't know how often we're going to be standing on feature tokens because of Gravebreaking we'll be moving them out from under us. But being on guard on starting hexes is still good.
Yeah, especially for Lane.
Yeah. Or Zondara. Like if you just want her to hang out in friendly territory, being on guard is never a bad thing. It is all fighters, so we do have to be a little careful.
Yeah, it can help other people out.
Yeah. I think I still like it though.
Yeah. So zone of control.
Yeah.
Okay.
Otherwise,
it does give Verlaine some landing spots as well if he wants to charge into a spot that has a starting hex.
Charge and be on guard afterwards.
That leaves us with one. We do have a kill surge in there, and we are looking for some progress. So I think maybe one of the accuracy gambits.
I think that's probably a good call. I think Devoted Strike seems pretty good. The other option is the Wild Incantation. If you're intending for the kills to always come from Verlaine, I think Devoted Strike is better. But if you want flexibility, I think you go with Wild Incantation.
Yeah, I guess the other thing that we've left is Rite of the Unbound if we want to threaten that damage spike.
Yeah, it's less likely to actually happen.
Yeah,
because it's a less likely gambit spell, and then it's damage, not accuracy.
Yeah,
and the damage is not guaranteed.
Yep, that's fair.
So I think if we just wanted extra damage, I would just say take the wisps.
Yeah, we've got that in there.
It's already in. Okay.
Seeking Find, Temporary Haven, Quick Roots, Curious Remnants, Driven Lurch.
Choice then is either Wild Incantation or Devoted Strike, right?
Yeah, let's do Wild Incantation, I guess. I don't know. What does your gut tell you?
I think my gut says with the amount of fighters on block these days, I like having the option to get the cleave with Devoted Strike.
All right, let's give that a shot.
Because there's just so few scenarios where the attacks with the zombies will matter.
Yeah.
And Wild Incantation also is a spell. There is a chance it will just fail.
That's true. All right. On to upgrades.
I think there's a couple we just have to have, right?
Yeah. What jumps to your mind right away on that?
I think personally, Salvaged Intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's just a lot of things that this card could help us with. Whether it's getting on feature tokens or extra attacks or any number of things. I really like that one. I'm guessing we probably want Excavated Bludgeon as well, just for that extra threat.
Sure. I think Amber Bone Infusion.
Yeah. Yep. The extra defense is pretty nice. Kind of no matter who it goes on. I obviously would prefer Zondara.
Yeah. How about Undying Love? I think is situationally good enough to include.
I think it has plenty of use.
Especially dragging a fighter into enemy territory if that's important for...
Yeah, if you really have to.
Yeah.
I think then the rest of these is kind of like they all have their uses from the infection cards. It's just a question of, is there anything we really need from Daring Delvers?
Sure. Let's go take a look.
Yeah. So for Daring Delvers, we've got... So we need Explorer stuff. Like there's just a non-zero number that we need to have. We don't need as much as some builds would require.
Yeah.
One that I really like is Dousing Limb. It's just a reaction after your activation. You scatter 2 and push the fighter up to 2 hexes along the chain.
Okay.
So most of the time, the way I like to use this is that you just place it with smash facing the direction you want to go and hope you roll 1 smash because you can just push 1.
Push the 1. It interferes with the reaction window on Salvaged Intelligence and with the Gravebreak, but it probably still does.
So a number of these upgrades are reactions that will be interfering with other reactions. And I don't know that is the end of the world because I think they're all kind of toolboxy where they're not something you're going to want to do all the time. But when you know you want to, you're going to do it. I think oftentimes I would personally want this on either Zondara or Verlaine to give them a reaction to get to where I need them to be.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it messes with her stolen knowledge as well, but
it does.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. All right. Sorry.
Yeah. All of the reactions in the deck are after activation reactions. So everything is, all the fighters in the warband also have after activation reactions.
Sure.
So, bit rough there, but I think it's still fine. Okay. The other one that I think is really good for Explorer upgrades is Prospector.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And this one just lets you place a feature token.
Okay.
So you do get a charge token after you use this, so you do have to kind of be careful, but what it can allow you to do is if you're in a position where you don't want a Gravebreaker, you can't for whatever reason, you can still place feature tokens. Mm-hmm. So,
including under yourself, so you can kind of double dip, place, get one, and then you're on at the end and get one.
Yep, it's pretty good.
All right, that puts us, we now sitting on 6 total upgrades: Salvage Intelligence, Excavated Bludgeon, Amberbone, Infusion, Undying Love, Dowsing Limb, Prospector.
Yeah, I think at this point we start to get into some of the options where it's like, well, how do we want to fill this out? There's a number of things in faction that can give you extra movement. There's a weapon upgrade which we will ignore because almost no one can take it. 9 lives is a weird one, but like there's a chance to just ignore damage dealt by gambits or lethal hexes, which is, if ever a time to use, now is probably the time, but I still don't know if it makes the cut. So I don't know, where's your head at with what else we kind of need?
I think in faction, I think we want Cursed Flesh. That's a +1 wounds thing. Especially with Unearth, we can decide when we want that and go get it. We still
that makes sense.
3 more.
Is Broken Heart one you would want to be fishing out?
Yeah, I think in some matchups you really
want that +1 dice.
So it's and the Inspire is often important. So like if somehow Verlaine gets sniped, you don't want Zondara to be stuck in never Inspire situation.
Yeah.
So
I like that.
Even if they both live, it's fuel for one inspiring the other because it's not required to be played when somebody's out. Leaves us 2 to go.
Yeah. So one that I kind of like is Plundered Knowledge. It's another reaction after the activation. This one is after a kill. You can increase your exploration count by 2 or draw 2 power cards. Ideally, this only goes on for Lane.
Yep.
But it's probably pretty scary if he gets it.
Let's do it. 1 left.
So I like that all right. So I think then I kind of like Conqueror's Circlet. You can only give this to Zondara, but it gives +1 move, and then all your other friendly fighters' move characteristics become equal to their move. The downside to this is that Inspired Verlaine technically loses 1 move when this is out, but it gives all the zombies +1. So everyone becomes speed 4, and I think there's some utility there. It's just a question of, is that what we want? Is that what we need?
Yeah, I think it's that or 9 lives. I always see Final Say and I'm like, oh man, I want to be
so great
so cool
if you did it. It's just, when are you going to get to do it?
Yeah.
I agree. I think Final Say is cooler in theory than in practice. I think if I were to choose between the two as upgrades, I would probably say we take 9 lives and think about the scenarios in which Conquered Circlet would have been really nice.
Yep, I like it.
So that is 20 power cards.
Yeah, it is.
There is a line of thinking that I feel is worth just discussing. Because you have guaranteed upgrades that you can pull out of the deck, would you consider adding 1 or 2 extra upgrades?
If I was already in a situation where I was like, man, I really wish there was another upgrade I could include, but because we're already kind of on this, like, I don't know about
Yeah.
You know.
The only other one that I was considering is Cursed Strength, just in the off
Oh yeah,
chance that you want +1 damage or really need it.
I actually kind of like that. I mean, we've not talked about it, but it can go on in Zondara, and she just heals herself.
Yeah, I mean, there is the possibility that she
Yeah.
can just offset it completely.
Let's put that in instead of 9 lives for now.
Okay.
Uh,
So just leave it at 20, but then have
yeah.
yeah. I only brought it up because it's something I thought about, and it's like one of the only warbands that has such reliable card draw, and specifically it's drawing upgrades.
Yeah.
So you can guarantee that you get the upgrades out of your deck. So
Yeah, I think you still want to. You're still a little worried about wanting to get that first hand with plenty of gambits.
yeah,
Right? So,
no, I don't disagree.
Yeah.
It's just like I said.
Okay.
Figure it was worth discussing for the episode.
Well, what I know and you don't is that this deck is going to be playing against a. We're going to try it out. Rhyme Block Relics with the Plague Pack. So.
Oh, okay. That should be fun.
Yeah, there's some weird interactions there where the the zombies are gonna like grave break the objective in No Man's Land that the Plague Pack want. There's gonna be some interesting fighting over tokens. So,
oh, that really messes up Plague Pack a lot.
Yeah.
Oh man, wow. Okay, cool. I like it. That should be fun.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're super interested to see what other people build, and obviously we're going to try and do a little side hustle here and put a Fearsome Fortress one together. If Skylar gets one or I get one, I'll send it your way, Phil, and we'll also share it more widely. You got anything else you want to say about this warband? I think for the first looks we've been doing, give me one favorite thing about this warband, and I think I'll include it here. What's your number one favorite thing about this warband?
Oh man, making me choose. There's so many things I like. I will say my favorite thing about this warband is that they can do a thing that is completely unique. There is no other warband that cares about placing feature tokens quite like they do.
Yeah. I've been copping out a little bit on these other reviews and saying I love how well they've captured the theme, and that is true here. But I think for me, it is the high points of the art in this deck are so high that I think that might even be my, like, there are multiple times where I'd see a card and just be like, whoa, like,
yeah,
I'm just going to look at that for a while. Like, really cool. Yeah, really impressed with them.
Yeah.
Hey, why don't you let us know what your favorite thing about this warband was, or what builds you've developed? We'd love to hear about it. You can tell us that on our Discord. That's the best place to get in touch with us. And there's a link in the show notes of every episode we release. If you prefer email, there's always whatthehexcast@gmail.com, at WTHcast. If you're doing X or Blue Sky, we want to say thanks to the folks who support us on the Patreon. We don't really... We mentioned at the end of each show, I don't know if we even include a link to it in our show notes, but this is an aside for probably for another time. Maybe this gets cut, but we struggle with this idea of do we make stuff to reward people for being patrons, and then that feels bad because then it's pay locked. There's a paywall in front of it for everyone else, and it's kind of why we've floundered a little bit, but that's our struggle that we're working with internally. Anyway, but also thanks to GW for providing us with the preview content that make this review possible. You can check out all our content, and most importantly, in context of this, all the day of, as soon as this goes live, as soon as we're allowed to tell you about it, all of our blog entries will be there. Where you can read every single card and our thoughts on those cards as we've gone through them. Those are available for all 6 of the releases that are up for pre-order on the day of release. Coming up, the week of Warhammer Underworlds continues, and on the backside of that, it will either be this battle report with these. Or just probably some more thoughts, and also Adepticon is coming at us, so maybe that as well. So much stuff
so
going
fast.
on. Yeah. Phil, This is
Yeah.
that time of the episode where
Okay.
you have the where you have the joy of answering this. Let's see. Let's go with the Flavitex quiz. There's a lot of really good ones. I always try to find one that's not. I try to find that balance between not too obvious, but also like not too just
Yeah.
like, hey, this could be any possible card in here. But let's go with we'll say Zondara's blessings push her followers beyond their physical limits.
Ooh, I think I know. Is it Wild Incantation?
It is not.
Ooh. Okay. Okay. Push beyond their physical limits. Rite of the Unbound?
This is an upgrade. Give me one more shot
upgrade.
here.
Okay. All right. All right. Third try. Cursed Strength, maybe?
Yeah, that's it. Yep.
Okay.
All right. For recommend listening, for context here, I noticed they were Zondara and Fairlane. I was calling her Zani, and then I was like, "Oh, Zani, is this Zani and Fair, the Sonny and Cher of Underworlds?"
Yes.
So your recommend listening is "I Got You, Babe" by Zani and Fair. I mean, Sonny and Cher. We had a whole bunch of amazing recommendations. Special thanks to Battle Mallet for any number of great options, which I could have included here. This might have been the episode where I had the most input from the cast and from outside sources on what we could do.
Probably the first time we've gotten outside suggestions in a long time.
Yeah, since Max Bernstein.
Oh man, he'd give us a whole playlist.
Oh man, he did. Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for What the Hex. I've been Davey.
And I've been Phil.
Or was one of us writing these down?
Uh-oh. I was not, because my keyboard is very loud.
All right. And you know what I forgot to mention? Big shout out to Pick for being the literal backbone of the warband. I think it's her like weird spine that is the warband symbol.
Oh yeah. Huh. Okay. Well,
yeah,
that can be a little after credits.
Yeah. It is some cool because she's a beast mage. She's an amber mage that went desperate and went for death magic. So that's why all her stuff is like this weird kind of combo of beast magic and necromancy. But
very, very cool stuff, and it shows in the art when she's using the amber magic versus death. And that's pretty cool.
All right, stuff. Well, I think we got a good one. I'm gonna hit stop.